that. It's always fun to try to get all of these things going at once, but we will do our best to make that happen. So let's see here. Hello there, this is Dr. Katherine.Kelly, and I am trying to get this all organized. There we go. We got Facebook Live up. If you are just now joining us, feel free to make yourselves cozy. We usually do this for about an hour. I can see that I have a hair that's going to be out of control today, but we're going to go with it. So welcome. We're going to, I usually talk for just a few minutes to let people kind of get themselves in. Because, oops, we've got another person trying to come into, there we go. Okay, looks like we are going fine for Zoom, and I know I'm kind of managing a couple different things at a time, so bear with me. For some reason, my screen is wanting to act up a little. There we go. Okay, so I'm getting that better. I'm sorry if I've got glare. I just realized that I'm wearing my glasses that I do tend to get a glare, so I apologize for that, but bear with me. So tonight we're going to be talking about members of our soul group, so soulmates and life mates and twin flames and twin flame souls. There's usually some difference. People get a little confused for all of these, but I want to kind of prime this a little bit by saying, of course, February is Love Month, and so we have to kind of think about, okay, how is it that we integrate love into our lives? What does love do for us? What is it that, and I am really sorry I didn't think about these glasses, but these glasses are my glare glasses. I have some non-glare glasses I usually wear and I forgot, but I'm not going to go down and get them, so I apologize. You could probably try without them, but I wouldn't be able to see very well, so I'm going to go with this. But yeah, we have lots of ideas about what soulmates are supposed to be, and I want to just clarify for you how to make sense of these people on our soul group. And I usually, again, just talk for a few minutes because I know it takes a while for people to come in. Just to give you a little bit of information, for those of you who are on Zoom, if you have interest in adding some sort of a comment, then what you can do, and I'm going to switch this around a little bit. Let's see if I can get this back. If you want to add a comment, there's a chat bar, and so go to the bottom of your screen if you are on Zoom, and you can make a comment down there. I will try to keep an eye on that to see who makes comments when. And then if you are on Facebook, go ahead and if you can, just go ahead and say hello, type your name in, just so we can say hello, and then that'll be the way that we communicate, because that's going to help me know what questions you have and also any comments that you may have that you want to make during this time. Because again, I want to, the reason I do these soul group, soul chats every month is to help you really understand more about the soul and more about how the soul impacts our life and how other people impact our life, because every soul that enters our life is there for a reason, at least one reason, usually multiple reasons. But so yeah, I just want to make sure that we have the option to make those conversations open for you. Now, again, if you are just joining, I see some numbers going up in the Facebook Live. I don't, let's see, we've got a handful of people on the Zoom. Just make sure that if you want to make a comment, you just go to the comment bar on the Facebook Live and you can type anything in that you want there. Well, not anything, be careful with that. Any of your questions, any of your comments over there. And then also for Zoom, you know, there's a chat bar at the bottom, so you can open up that screen and make a comment as well. So let's see here. I'm having a few people say hello. So we've got some new people. So hey, Ashley, good to see you again. Ashley is my, I guess I call her my assistant. She's the behind the scenes person for me during a lot of the work that I do. And she's probably going to be posting some things on Facebook at the end as far as my website and things like that. So keep an eye out for that. Hi, Susan and Jenny. Great to see you both again. And then we've got Heather and Loretta and Hewald on Zoom. So this is great. So we'll just keep on going. So Soulmates are such an interesting topic. What I would say first, and I'm going to ask some questions first, and usually what I do here is I type up a bunch of questions that I have to kind of stir your brains, get your brains thinking a little bit, and see what we can do to kind of really get you clear, get you understanding what this soulmate thing is about and what these um, members of our soul group are here to do for us. First question is, and I'm just going to throw this out there, is just in general, what do you think a soulmate is? Because I want to open up this idea, because a lot of people romanticize the idea of soulmate, but I really kind of want to hear what you know of soulmates, what you know of twin flames. I mean, feel free to write down anything, because that's going to help me know and guide me for what I need to talk about tonight. Just in the meantime, I usually, like I said, I talk for a little while to let people come in. Just in the meantime, I just want to mention a couple of things. This is for those of you who follow the information that I put out there on Facebook. Couple things. Mercury's in retrograde. We are at the peak of retrograde right now, which means that, you know, I know I didn't sleep hardly at all last night. It just had me really stoked and energized, and I could not go to sleep. Well, I went to sleep, just woke up and couldn't go back to sleep. So we're going to have about another week and a half of fairly intense energies, and then we have about 3 weeks of a die-off period. A lot of times during this time of year, people really start processing their relationship issues. They become very aware, because, again, February being the month of love, it starts to stir thoughts and kind of stirs our old stuff about relationships, because, again, there's all these expectations of what February is supposed to be about. So if you are having some things stir for you, just know that's normal. But also, Mercury in retrograde is here. You know, it happens for us because it is here to push stuff to the surface that needs to be dealt with anyway. So I just usually like to point this out as much as possible to help people realize that we've got some layers on us. Also, January, February are the hardest times as far as depression and anxiety and trying to get through. And so it is, you know, it's just something that I try to nudge people, that if you have any seasonal affective disorder, make sure that you are doing your best to take care of yourself right now. Get your sunlight if possible. I know we've had a lot of rainy days and snowy days, but get some sunlight, no sunglasses. And then also, if you need a therapy light, you know, I've got a therapy light over here. If you need to buy one, you can get them on Amazon. Just make sure it's 10,000 lux or light units. Um, there's a person this morning who I was talking to who I said, you know, if you have a very hard time in the mornings, try citrus oils, try cinnamon oil. Both of those are very stimulating and get you going. I actually use my one of my soul health essentials. It's called Blues Buster. See if I can get this in front of the screen so people can see it. And have been using this 2 or 3 times a day. I do have a touch of seasonal affective, and I'm just trying to nudge people, make sure that you're taking care of yourselves right now, because things can get heavy. And if you are in a relationship right now, things can get kind of intense between you, because not only is it February and that can stir stuff, seasonal affective can stir you, as well as the fact that if you are in living with someone during COVID times, that can be a little intense. I have a client I talked to today that she said she has like no time alone, and it's really getting to her, because she was used to having a lot of time alone. Plus, she's an introvert, so she needs a lot of time to restore. So I usually throw all that stuff out there just to make sure that that I'm reminding people of ways to take care of their mental health. So, okay, so one person on Zoom says, I think soulmates are people I feel like I've known and feel comfortable around. Great, absolutely. And what kind of explain the different levels of members of our soul group. Most people start to think that soulmates are people that we're supposed to have a relationship with, a romantic relationship. And you know, that's kind of the, again, romanticized version of this. What I try to tell people is that we have lots of different kinds of soulmates in our life. So a soulmate is someone that we almost have an instant connection with, that we feel very comfortable around, that we feel like there's a sort of a relationship that's already there in some ways. And that, you know, soulmates are usually souls that we have come into contact with in more than one lifetime. So it's very easy for us to transition into those friendships or relationships or colleague situations, whatever it is that makes that, whatever the introduction is, it's usually that there's a deeper bond for you. But what I will say about soulmates is that, you know, soulmates can also be friends. They can be family members. They can be neighbors. They can be anybody that we have built a relationship, or I don't even want to say built, that we have connected with someone that we feel almost an instant kinship to, you know, a connection with. But I want to ask this question for those of you who are animal lovers or not animal lovers. Do you think you can have an animal, as you can just throw in there yes or no, do you think you can have an animal in your life that is a soulmate? Yes or no? What would you say about that? Because I think it's important to address all forms of soulmates. I'm going to pick this up. So in my chapter on soul, or on excuse me, social health, in my soul health book, which it's funny, soul health is so imprinted in my brain that it comes out of my mouth like crazy. But there is a chapter, the social chapter talks all about um, the different kinds of soulmates that we have, and there are different friendships, there's different kinds of other relationships. But and this is the new version, the second edition. On page 93, I have a description of all of the different kinds of soulmate types of relationships, and I call it the soul's social playground, in case you're interested in reading that. Um, but let me see. So, okay, so I have one person saying yes, that they think animals can be soulmates. I hear an absolutely and another yes. Okay. And I want to point that out. You know, some people don't think that animals have souls. Um, I would so beg to differ with that for many, many reasons. But, you know, you can't really have a close relationship with something that doesn't have a soul, because the soul is what connects us. The soul is what brings us together. That energetic connection brings us together. And before, you know, I talked in one of my previous, might have been two of my previous soul chats, I talked about that magnetic connection. I am absolutely convinced that many animals are brought into our path as soulmates, or souls that we can connect with, both for our support and our learning. I know for me, I have come to become, well, I've really become very aware that my dogs, whenever they pass, I swear that that dog that has passed helps me find the next dog, because there are elements, very unique elements in that next dog that are very similar to the one that just passed. And um, it's uncanny. And even my best friend has noticed this with my 3-year-old puppy. I keep calling her a puppy. She acts like a puppy. Um, because she sings, she howls, she makes sounds just like Chloe, the dog that I lost, and I never want to say replaced, but that's why I got Mooney, is that this other dog died very suddenly. But she sings just like Chloe did. And so I find it fascinating that I do think that our soulmate animals actually want to keep taking care of us. So they keep passing on characteristics, or giving us ideas and giving us indications that they are there still in one way or another. So I do believe that we can have animals that are soulmates. Is every animal a soulmate? Probably not. But it's those animals that we really have a close bond with. That have an uncanny kind of bond with, that I do think that it's important to acknowledge those as soulmates as well. Do you think that there are family members, and I mean sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, do you think any of them can be soulmates? I'm going to let someone into the Zoom room. So do you think that family members who are not romantic partners, or who aren't friends necessarily, do you think that they can be soulmates? Okay, so we have someone that says, of course. Okay, so I want to throw this, and there's a couple, yes, of course. So there's some other people in Zoom that are um, commenting on that. Next question, and I'm going to go back and talk more about the family members as soulmates in a minute. Do you think soulmates are always positive in our lives? Yes or no? So do you think that you have that those soulmates are always positive influences or positive people or encouragers in our lives? Yes or no? Okay, so I see a no in the Zoom. Anybody else? Anybody in the Facebook page want to say anything? Because I want to get really clear about what soulmates really are. Because we can have soulmates. You know, if we think about the core reason why we have soulmates in our lives, it is here we connect with those people because we are supposed to learn. We're supposed to learn from souls. Like I said during the last chat, you know, I would say as a therapist, probably at least 90%, if not more, of the reasons why people come into a therapy office are for interpersonal stuff. So whether it's relationship issues, conflict issues, communication, or confidence in terms of feeling not good enough for the other person, or feeling like the person diminishes us, or whatever it might be. If you think about just the very fact that probably at least 90% of clients go into a therapy office for interpersonal reasons, we have to also acknowledge the fact that soulmates can be there to teach us in a not so pleasant way. So I'm not going to have you raise your hands, but I'm going to have you just stop for just a second and think about, from as far back as you can remember, who in your lifetime and when did it happen? Did you have some people that you were really close to or not so close to that were there to teach you and to basically be there as soulmates, but in a negative or not so pleasant way? Just think about that for a second. And what's interesting when people do that scan is that oftentimes you do start listing in your head the people that you still love but you don't like. And that's one thing, is that we can have love for someone that is a soulmate and not like how they treat us, not like their behavior, but it's that love part of that connection between us that has brought us together through that magnetic effect. Oftentimes our soulmates are the ones who teach us the biggest lessons. Would you all agree with that? I'm seeing someone nod on Zoom, and I know that I don't have the camera. Yeah, so I'm getting some yeses from the Zoom folks. So at the very core, at the very, very base core, souls come into each other's lives to learn. I would say most of us learn lessons from the challenges that we have with those people much more than we have from the positive things that we have happen with those people. And so our growth, and I've said this many times, our growth does not come, our evolution does not come without discomfort or inconvenience. So that's the other thing we have to kind of think about, is we are going to have these people, these souls in our lives that are here to stir us, and that, you know, we have constant clashes with, or constant kinds of reactions with, or remind us of things that happened in the past, or remind us of our wounds. And we all have these what I call soul wounds that tend to follow us throughout our lifetime until we really know how to work through them. I have this is a soul services client that I've worked with a few times in the last, about the last year. And she has a boss situation that is just very challenging, and it ebbs and flows, where she's able to talk it through with this person, but there's this boss that really stirs her, presses her buttons, pushes her to really be in her truth, pushes her to learn what her boundaries are, pushes her to not let herself be diminished. There's all these different dynamics that have happened with this person. And, you know, during that very first reading I had with her, I basically said, you know, this person is here as a soulmate. This person is here as a master teacher, someone to teach you major, major lessons. And that's why your buttons are pushed the way they are. And so she called me again for another reading not too long ago, and more issues were coming up, and I had to help her uncover and uncover even more of it. And that was one of those things where we were just peeling back layers of how this all happens. So next question. Do you think that those kinds of soulmates, those challenging soulmates, do you think they have always shown up in previous lives. What do you think? So I'm seeing someone, and I read her mouth saying probably. Was that what I saw? Yeah. And then I see someone not necessarily. Okay. So this is the interesting thing. And again, anybody on Facebook, if you want to comment, and I'll pull this down. Oh, sorry about that. I wasn't pulling that down to see what people's answers were. Okay, so I have someone saying, not sure. Trickster, yes, yep. Okay, so here's the interesting thing. Now, and this depends on how much you know about reincarnation, but the thing is, most of us have had multiple lives because we're slow learners as far as evolution goes. We have to go through several incarnations in order to learn what we're supposed to learn in order to get to a certain place. But it doesn't necessarily mean that one of your soulmate, whoever is this master teacher, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've shown up in every lifetime, and it doesn't mean that you've had many lifetimes with them. It might be that you have redecided, or you've decided maybe on one of your in-between life reviews that you have a new lesson to learn. And so you could invite a new soul into your path in order to learn from that person. And what's interesting about that is we do tend to think that our soulmates are lifelong companions or lifetimes long companions. And maybe yes, and maybe no. And that's what's so interesting about this is it's like a cast member. I don't know how many of you watched the Harry Potter movies, but I think it was the first one or two, I can't remember, the first one or two movies, Dumbledore was played by a totally different Dumbledore, but the original cast member passed away, and they had to find a new Dumbledore. So they actually had to go through a process of finding someone similar. That's how soulmates work, is that sometimes we have a cast member who it finishes their lessons and they're done, so they don't have to reincarnate anymore. Sometimes they're just here to be a master teacher in one or two lifetimes, and they don't have to carry on. However, it's more often the case that we do carry on those relationships throughout multiple lifetimes. So if they show up in one lifetime with challenging dynamics, you can pretty much be assured that you have had a previous lifetime with them, at least one that has been a challenging situation. Now I'm going to, there are some questions through the Facebook group, so I will talk about those in just a second, but I want to kind of give you some more examples. I've been doing more and more soul readings lately, so I've had several people calling for Akashic Record readings or soul realignment sessions, and so a lot of them are calling because of health problems. Several of them, almost all of them, call and they want me to tell them something about a relationship, whether it's a family member or a partner. But I recently did a reading for someone who has, and this is not unusual, who has had a very difficult relationship with their mother. And she wanted to know what the heck is going on with this. This is very challenging. And so I basically, as part of the reading, did a past life portion of the reading and helped her discover that there were very similar dynamics in the last 3 lifetimes with this person that she's playing out now, although she's learning it in this lifetime. So she's learned to detach. And so that's part of her evolution. So for instance, if you have had a relationship with someone in this lifetime who has betrayed you or hurt you, or you decided you were not going to be treated like that anymore, if you move out of that relationship, if you consciously choose that you're going to do something differently, then you are basically breaking the bond in a positive way. You are completing your karma with that soul, so that it is possible that you will not reincarnate with that person later. Because if you've learned your lesson in the way that you were supposed to learn it in this lifetime, you do not have to reincarnate with that same person in a future lifetime, even if they have not learned their own lessons from this. Does that make sense? I want people to kind of be very clear on that, because if you have done your work and they haven't, it doesn't mean that you have to wait for them. It means that they have to find a new cast member. It means that they have to find someone else to learn whatever they're supposed to learn to help them heal their own soul wound, if you have graduated. Now, here's the thing is out of the kind of soul love you may have for that person, you may choose to come back into a lifetime with them in the future. That is totally up to you. But if you are done, you can be done. So that's another part of how to distinguish. Do you really have to go through multiple lives with a person till both souls learn whatever they're supposed to learn? And the answer is no. As long as you have learned what you're supposed to learn, you do not have to continue that process. And I would say it's important to know that so that as you do whatever personal work you're here to do and that work through whatever wounds that you're supposed to work through, that you consciously say, I'm done. I've learned everything I'm supposed to learn. There's a question. Okay, there's a question on the Facebook page that says, is there a difference between soul groups and soul mates? Great question. Because we did talk about soul groups. I think that was last month, actually. So yes and no. So you can have soulmates as part of your soul group, for sure. But it may feel like you have a soul group that not everybody in that soul group is a soulmate. Does that make sense? So you can have, I'm going to try to repeat that as close as I can. You can have people that are soulmates that are part of your soul group. And you can have soulmates that are not part of your soul group, meaning your immediate surroundings. You can have some, I don't know if you call them outliers or not, but you can have some scattered souls and different relationships you have with these people, but they're not necessarily the core group of humans that you travel through life with. So, you know, for instance, you can have a core group of friends, but then you can have someone that is kind of over here that you're really close to, but they don't really relate to that immediate group. They can still be part of your soul group. They might just not be part of the social human group. So there's all these different layers of how souls interact with each other. And I think that's important to remember because, again, not every member of your soul group, meaning the souls that you travel through life with, they don't necessarily have to be soulmates, if that makes sense. They can be different, maybe levels of closeness, but they don't have to actually be a soulmate that you feel super, super close with. So basically both souls. Okay, so basically both souls need to want to connect. Yes, and that's a really good question, Susan. So yes, in order for two souls to come together and learn lessons, your soul has to have made a decision, a conscious decision that it was going to connect with you as a soul, or your soul had to make that conscious decision that you were going to connect with them in order to learn whatever both of you are supposed to learn. So that is done in what's called an in-between life regression, or in-between life period, where in between lives we go through this process of choosing the lessons we're going to learn in the future life, the souls that we are going to, the souls that we are going to go through that lifetime with. And also, yeah, actually, we choose our bodies, we choose health problems, we choose a lot of the things that are going to make our movie of life what it is. And we can talk more about in-between life regressions at another time, but our souls have to choose the other players in our soul family. So as you think about parents, you know, a lot of times, like I said, we have a difficult time thinking that we chose our parents, but we actually did. You have to choose your immediate family members in order to have the lessons that you're supposed to learn. So if you have a very difficult parent, a mom or a dad or both, or grandparents, we chose that as part of our soul development to grow beyond whatever it is that we're supposed to grow through in order to become who we are. Does that make sense? Because I know that's a big one, is that we do choose even our enemies. We choose our challenges. We choose what it is that we are supposed to learn and evolve beyond in any given lifetime. Do you have questions about that? I want to make sure that you ask those questions along the way. Because these are again, these are multi-layered type thinking questions. These are not questions that everybody knows to ask. Let me see, there's some comments here. Okay, so I'm just hearing some yeses or nos or not necessarily. Okay, so I just want to make sure. Anybody have questions? And so basically, yes, you have to want to connect. Okay. Any questions so far? I want to make sure that I'm covering the bases. Okay. So what is the difference? And I'm going to have you really think this through and type to me what you think the answer is. What is the difference between a soulmate and a life mate? There's someone on the Facebook page that says, yes, it makes sense, but now they're wondering what the heck she was thinking in choosing those family members. Yes, we all want to smack our heads and go, holy cow, what was I thinking? Um, there's a question, what if the person chose to leave this life before the soul's lesson was complete? Can the remaining soul learn without them on earth? Yes, that is a great question. So yes, so if one of the, well, and put it this way, if a soul chose to leave the dynamic between you and that person, that soul, before your lesson was complete, it was probably part of the grand design to begin with. Now, I'm not saying that we have a perfect structure and a perfect life plan of how things are going to go in our lifetime before we get into this lifetime, but we do have a fairly good idea of the kinds of lessons we're going to learn. The thing that throws all of that off is that humans have free will. So humans can choose, oh, wow, I'm really going to work on this and I'm going to get past this, or humans can go, ooh, I don't want to go there. So that's why I say we can actually finish our lessons and not reincarnate with another soul at some point in a later life if we've learned our lesson. So if someone checks out, they're done, or they don't want to do their work, and you continued learning what you're supposed to learn, partially maybe because that person checked out, because sometimes it's them checking out that wakes us up to go, wait, why am I doing this if they're not willing to do their work? Think about that. Then you are actually moving beyond that situation. You're evolving beyond it because you are not going to let it keep you mired down and keep you from growing. So I want to throw something out there. I have this story of this client from years ago. I'm sorry, my nose is ringing with all the heat that I'm not good with the heat that goes on during the winter. Okay, had a client years ago, and I have not seen this person for probably at least 10 years. She was referred to me by another therapist who was retiring and was working with this person. And she was very mired in a divorce that had happened 20 some years prior. And she never moved on. She constantly, almost every session, brought something up about her marriage, brought something up about him, and he did cheat on her. And so she was very stuck in that whole situation. And, no matter what I did to confront her or challenge her or ask her, what's keeping you stuck in this, or, do whatever soul healing I could do to get her through this, she wanted to be stuck in that wound. Do I think that he, the ex, went on to evolve beyond her? Yes, probably so. Was she stuck? Yes. Will she probably be stuck in this next lifetime? I would say almost absolutely, because my guess is she's not going to do any more work about this relationship thing in this given lifetime. Because if she was mired for, I think I asked her one time, how long ago it was that she had been divorced, and she said, I think she said 25 or 26 years. And yet she was still holding on to all of that. Basically, she chose not to grow. And that makes it very tough because, I'm going to illustrate this. I talk to clients about this. I don't know if you remember seeing either in person or on TV an old carnival where they had those horses that went up the incline, and the whole thing was you had to hit those paddles as hard as you can to try to get the horse up the incline, and then if you hit the bell first, you won. Well, I used the example of that for souls that are in this lifetime, and you have to be growing in the same direction at the same, relatively the same pace, for one of you not to veer off and grow in a different direction. Now, the other thing is if you were paddling like crazy, trying to hit that paddle, and and you're going up this incline, but the other person's horse is way back there, and you're like, come on, dude, get up here, get up here, get up here. Eventually, you're going to outgrow that soul anyway, because basically, if you are growing and evolving, and this person's kind of a lump of flesh, they're really not doing much, then really you're going to outgrow them. And in many cases, I would say more often than not, it is actually a good thing for you to break that contract that you had with them to come into that lifetime, because that's likely one of the lessons you're supposed to learn, is to not let someone hold you back for your own evolution or growth. So if you have to say, I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore, even if it totally upsets them, then you are in a positive way outgrowing that dynamic. So that's where, and a lot of people would not like me to say this, that's where that whole idea of lifelong marriage or lifelong partnership is kind of an antiquated idea. Because the thing is, generations ago, that was what you did. You got married, you just stayed with them regardless. And that is not why people get married these days. You know, in the last probably 50 years, maybe even less than that, you know, women in particular have gotten married for different reasons and different dynamics than they used to get married. So that's the other thing to think about, is that, you know, it's, you know, we have this romanticized idea that we're supposed to meet someone and live with them the rest of our lives. But that's kind of an antiquated idea, given that if you are someone who is devoted to your evolution and you are working to get that horse up that incline, so to speak, and the other person is not, well, then part of your lesson is to decide, do I wait for that person and stop growing, or do I move on? And that can be very hard to swallow at some point. Um, so this is another question I'm going to throw out there. So do you think a divine mate or a soulmate is someone you are actually supposed to live with for the rest of your life? I'm seeing some videos of, I'm not so sure. What do you think? Anybody in the Facebook group or the Zoom group, do you think that soulmates are you were supposed to have a contract with them for your entire life? And I know this is a tricky one, because we like to think the fairy tale that we have grown up with actually exists. Okay, so I see someone saying not necessarily. Okay. Okay, so one person you said you thought you were, and has that changed for you now? I see her mouthing something, but I'm not sure what she's mouthing. Let me see if I can see. I'm going to try to get that down. So, you know, I think this is one of those things where um, I can get myself in, well, me not getting in trouble, but people can really look at me from askance, because they're like, what do you mean we're not supposed to stay together? I have had many therapy clients come into my office and want me to give them the answer for whether or not they should stay in a marriage. And I can't be the one to answer. I usually put it back on them to say, you know, do you feel like you can grow with this person still? Because that's part of this, is oftentimes if you have finished your lesson, then it's almost probably part of your lesson to move on beyond that marriage or that relationship anyway. Okay, so I have someone saying, the people I feel the soul connection with currently are the ones you work with. Okay, so this is a good point. So do you, how can I ask this question? So obviously, coworkers can be soulmates. Would you say that is a true statement? I mean, I would say yes. You know, I've met a lot of my good friends through working with them, and um, and continue to be friends with them even if we don't work together anymore. So yes, so you can feel very close to them. I want to ask the difference between, what do you think the difference of, well, let me ask this. What do you think a twin soul is? You know, that's another term that gets thrown around out there. So what do you think a twin soul is? Because there's twin souls and there's twin flames. And let me see. Okay. Any ideas of what a twin soul is? Because this is the other thing, is that we have to kind of sift this out to understand who these key players are in our lives. Any comments that you want to make? And all of this is in my book, but I just want to kind of throw this out there. Anybody want to comment? And I know this is a, some people say have no idea, I'm not so sure. So the, excuse me, twin flame soulmates are sort of the iconic idea of the romanticized version of what we think we're supposed to be with. So in other words, the person that we know at first sight that we're supposed to be with them, that we are passionately in love with them, that we want to spend every spare moment with them, that there's this very intense kind of connection that we have with them. And you know, that is basically what they consider to be a twin flame. Now here's the interesting thing, because I've done a lot of reading and I've talked to a lot of spiritual folks, a lot of intuitives, because I'm always curious what they have to say about, you know, do you really believe that a twin soul exists? Some of the literature says that what happens with a twin flame soul is that in the very beginning of your soul's existence, something happened to split you from your other half, and that your life mission or lifetime's mission is to rekindle a connection with that other half of you. So that twin flame is supposed to be, according to some people, your other half. Now, I'm not sure I agree with that, and I'll tell you why in a second. Let me see. Okay, so there's some people who said someone who has had a very similar experience in growing up. It's possible, it's very possible that they have had a very similar experience. But again, a lot of the reading, if you type this into Google, if you start to read about it, a lot of times the twin flame souls will be, you know, this romanticized version of, wow, this is a person that I'm, you know, completes you, as the movie says, and you know, brings your other half together, and you can't live without this person. In my experience, I've had two separate experiences in my life that the extent of the connection was literally overwhelming. And I'll explain that in a second. But that is one of the other key characteristics of a twin flame soul, is that this soul, once you connect with them, is supposed to be so intense that you kind of don't know what to do with them, and you don't know what to do without them. That there's this almost, well, I would say physical, there's almost a visceral, physical kind of connection you have with them, and it almost overtakes you. And I've had that happen with two different people in my life, and I'll tell you, it took me anyway completely out of my groundedness, because when it happened with either one of these people, it was a game changer. And once I figured out what to do with it, meaning that, you know, neither one of them were realistic situations for me to be paired with at all. But and I have a new term that I use for this, or a term that I created, is that sometimes we have souls that enter our life that I call igniter souls, that they are here to wake us up to something. And it may not be romance. It might be something about ourselves. It might be empowerment. It might be boundaries. It might be assertiveness. It could be anything, really. To our talents. It could wake us up to our talents. It could wake us up to a new level of spirituality. It could be anything. But we can have these souls that enter our lives, and it's almost like a collision. You feel it collide. You're like, what the heck just happened? It can almost viscerally, physically overtake you. And I'm not saying in love kind of way. It's almost like in an overwhelming kind of way. And again, that can be very, unless you've experienced it, it's very hard to describe. But I consider those souls to be igniter souls, meaning that you aren't supposed to have anything in this human life with them in the long run, but that these souls are here to wake you up to something. And if you think about our soul's development, our souls are here to evolve. Our souls are here to continue to awaken to more and more levels of consciousness and awareness, and whether it's about ourselves, awareness about the other souls in our lifetimes. And so sometimes we have to have these igniter souls to help us do that. And again, it can be very overwhelming. like I said, this has happened twice in my life. And what was really interesting about one of them is that I had known this person in graduate school, and literally, like, I would say 12 years later, this collision happened where we came back into contact, and I'm like, what the heck is this? But it was just so intense, but it had nothing to do with me having any kind of connection with this person in human life in the long run. It was about waking me up to some new levels of my own spiritual awareness. That's what it was with this person. Another person was someone I actually did date, but I didn't know what the heck was going on. I just knew that it wasn't realistic with who he was, um, for lots of reasons. And and it was just one of those things where I still felt that ignition, that level of intensity, and I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. But it was one of those things where it was I came to term it an igniter soul, that it was just something that was supposed to wake me up to some very important parts of myself. So we can have these twin flame experiences that have nothing to do with romance, nothing to do with recollecting, the other half of us, as some of the, I think, romanticized literature says, but we can still have these igniter souls come into our lives to wake us up to something um, that we need to be woken up to. And I know if you haven't experienced that, you don't really, I don't think I can explain it well enough for you to understand it, although I am convinced that a lot of the things that happen in my life, all the way back to childhood. I remember things happening going, back then I don't know what was going on, but now I can look back and know that I've experienced many of these things so that I can explain it to other people, or at least help them kind of get a feel for it. Um, so I guess I'm a guinea pig, or I don't know what I'd call it, but I do have a lot of spiritual experiences that have allowed me to help people awaken, or help explain things to other souls. Um, Okay, so a person on Facebook is saying, I have that experience. It's been very hard to let the intensity go. Yes, it's very hard to put that flame out. Misery and bliss at the same time. Absolutely. And that's that's a very good explanation, that it's misery because it's just so intense. It's almost every cell of your body is overwhelmed. And I'm not even going to say it's on fire, but it's overwhelmed. And then at the same time, it's so blissful that it's like, oh my gosh, you don't want it to stop, but you want it to stop. So I don't know how else to explain that, but yeah, it can be very intense. I'm curious, with you having said that, have you, the person on Facebook who just said that, do you know what you were supposed to learn from that experience? And you don't have to explain what it is that you were supposed to learn, but have you figured out what that igniter soul was there to do for you? Okay, I saw a little thumb go up, so I don't know if it was that person's thumb or not, but that's it, is we have all these different kinds of soul connections. Now, I'm going to tell you, there are, okay, so she says yes. Okay, so that's good. It's one of those things where when these things happen, again, you don't you don't really know how to make sense of them, except that in retrospect, which is how most of our learning takes place, in retrospect, a lot of times is when we can put it all together, is when we can go, oh, that's why that happened. So that's good that you were able to learn that. So there's something that's called, like I said, a twin flame soul, which is the romanticized version. And then we can have twin souls. So what do you think the difference between twin flame souls is from a twin soul? And I know I'm separating all of this out on purpose because I really want you to understand um, what all of these different types of soul members are. So what do you think the difference between a twin flame and a twin soul is? Because unfortunately, these terms are used interchangeably and they're not the same thing. Um, Anybody have an idea? Because, I think the thing is, when you go into a Hallmark store, and I laugh, I shouldn't pick on Hallmark. Hallmark's a wonderful company. Um, but when you go into a Hallmark store, especially for Valentine's Day or something like that, there's all this love in the air. There's all this energy in the air. And yet we mistake what these soul group members are about. And I want to get back to asking what a life mate is, because a life mate is a totally different kind of thing too. So a twin soul, so aside from a romantic relationship, we can have these parts of us that show up in, and when I say parts of us, we can have this reflection of someone else come to us in our lifetimes, and it just feels like these people fit. Now, it could be a romantic partner, but in most cases it's not, because that's where, again, most people look at the twin flame souls. But twin souls are what I call the partners without being partners. So they can be the super good friends who basically, the second you meet them, and you might have some skirmishes over the years, but it's basically, it's like that glove. There's just that fit, that wow, this person is just it fits. It doesn't mean you're blissful with that person, or that your friendship is not without some challenges, or that whatever kind of relationship you have with them, it doesn't mean there's no problem. It just means it fits somehow. um, this is kind of what I call a life mate. And so in my book, I talk more about the twin souls, which again are, aside from the relationship, the romantic relationship piece. But a lot of times I will talk to clients about life mates. And a life mate may be a person that you connect with, but again, you're in it for life, but there's not as much um, skirmish. There's not as much drama. There's not as much, if you do have drama, you work it out very easily. But these are people, these twin souls, as opposed to twin flame souls, often are with us for the rest of our lives. Or often, they're that old glove, they're that old pair of sneakers, that old pair of jeans, or whatever that feels very comfortable. And not that there's no wear and tear, but that it is a type of soul that stays with us and is very, again, it's comfortable. You know, I think about old sweaters or old sweatshirts, we can get stains in them, little snags in them, whatever, but we keep them. And it's because they're comfortable. It's because they fit. It's because they move with us and they're comfortable. They're kind of worn in, per se. So we can have those. We can also have companion soulmates, and companion soulmates, again, are kind of the souls that you do stuff with, but you don't necessarily tell them your deep and dark secrets. It might be more, it's just someone you hang out with, and that they're a companion, but it's not some deep dark thing. Now, or deep, I shouldn't say dark, deep thing. Now, I would say a lot of companion souls are animals. And someone says, can it be a friend you have and then drift apart and reconnect? Absolutely. So the friends that you do this with it can still be life mates. It's people that, again, you may have to go through some different challenges as far as your own individual stuff that pulls you apart, and then you can reconnect. And so it can be something that feels kind of wavy, or it can be something that a relationship that you have with someone that is, kind of non-dramatic, but it moves slowly in the same direction, if that makes sense. In other words, you're not super close, but it's someone you can always call on if you need to. So those are kind of the life mates. So those are the soulmates that, again, don't necessarily need that intensity, thank God, because I think if we had intense relationships with everybody, we wouldn't be able to make it through. It would be too much for the most part. Um, I talked about this kind of soulmate a few soul chats ago, and I brought it up a little bit today, but there are also teacher soulmates. And teacher soulmates are those master teachers. They're the ones that come into our life or our lifetimes, depending on if we've learned the lesson or not. And they are here to challenge us. So you can have these soulmates that are very challenging, and we love them in a way, but it's like that love-hate relationship. We love them, but boy, do they challenge us. It might be, again, boundaries. It might be they push our buttons as far as diminishing us. Um, it might be in one particular client, this was years ago, she had a boss, that different person, but she had a boss that, man, he just was all over her for everything, and didn't really cut her any slack for anything, and she worked her tail off and nothing got through to this person. And part of it was that, at one point I told her, he's a master teacher for you. And, I just saw her deflate, like, oh, I don't want him to be a master teacher. But he was, because he was there to really teach her to assert and to stay in her truth, and to not be upset by him, because, again, a lot of people are upset by him. So, we can have these master teacher soulmates in our lifetime that are there and they constantly grade on us. They constantly challenge us. There's not very much positive about it. It could be a parent, it could be a grandparent, it could be a neighbor, it could be a coworker, it could be, anybody that has that grading quality to them, and doesn't let up. Because I think that's one of the other challenges is, it's not a master teacher unless they keep at it. So, learning one or two lessons from someone, that's not a master teacher. It's still a teacher soulmate, but it's not a master teacher. Master teacher is someone that makes a huge impact on your life, challenges you down to the seams, and um, and you're growing. You just don't want to be in the situation. You can't get out of it because you're supposed to learn. But that's one of those um, times when you want to smack your head and say, why did I choose this? But at the same time, most people in retrospect can look back and go, whew, okay, now I know why I was supposed to go through that. So, all right, let's see here. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Oops, that's what happens when you have two computers running. You've got, okay, so we've already answered that. Okay, let me look at my list here, see if I've forgotten anything. Okay, just to throw some things out, the only question I haven't asked you guys is what kind of characteristics exist in a soulmate relationship? What do you think the characteristics of a soulmate relationship are? And so while you're thinking about that, there's someone who says, I think I've had a twin flame in my life for a little over 3 years, even connected dreams or through dreams, and I've learned vulnerability from them. Perfect. So as long as you have identified what it is that you were supposed to learn or are learning, that's going to help that process. So good for you. Good for you. Okay, so what kind of characteristics would you say exist in a soulmate relationship? Any thoughts? I'm going to tell you a little bit about my best friend and talk about like one of those old sweaters kind of things. So, and I can't remember how much I've said on these previous chats, but so I grew up in a family. I grew up in Colorado in a family of 5 kids, Catholic family. I was the youngest of 5. I was very different than any of my siblings. I see that more and more now. But I never felt normal until I met my best friend, and I was 14 when I met her. She was on the volleyball team. She's a year older than me. She was a sophomore, I was a freshman, and I was bumped up to the JV squad pretty early in my freshman year. So that was kind of nice because not only did that mean I got to play more volleyball, but it also meant that I met her. And it was interesting. Like I said, I never felt normal till I met her, and we're still best friends today. And so our paths have, one person said that, it's that a life mate is someone that you share very similar situations with. And it was interesting because our life patterns were very consistent. Her sister died 9 months before my dad died. So she was, I'm trying to think. She was 21 when her sister died. I was 21 when my dad died, but it was 9 months later. We had other similar things that were like a year apart, and it was just this stepwise fashion. She wanted me to move back to Colorado. She's like, why aren't you moving back? I told her I never felt right. And what happens 4 years ago, she gets transferred from her corporate America job in Denver to Charlotte, North Carolina. So interestingly, that's how it evolved, that I do think that I call her my partner without being a partner, because I just feel very comfortable. We're very connected. I know she's not on here, so I'll say this. She actually has my menstrual cycle symptoms for me, which is great. Ever since she moved here, she has my menstrual cycle symptoms. I don't ever have them, and I warn her when I can tell that I'm about to go through that cycle, because she will get the hunger, she will get the cramps, she will get the crankiness. I'm like, hey, if you want to take it on, you do it. I never asked you to do that. But it's really interesting because we are very much connected at the soul level. But characteristics, let's see here, similar core values, shadow sides. Okay, so I'll answer that question in a minute. So, so some of the core kind of characteristics, feeling connected very early into meeting each other, having very similar views or values, um, uh, being able and willing to work through stuff. You know, she and I went through some stuff way back, and I say way back because I don't even remember what the stuff was. I just know there was something in college, I think, that we kind of grew apart and then we grew back together. But you come back together. That's part of that characteristic. You tend to have a lot of similar likes. You tend to have kind of similar views in general. Life patterns are pretty similar. Like I said, she and I have had this leapfrog kind of thing of life experiences throughout our lives. Um, doesn't mean you have to be entirely like, you know, she lives and breathes corporate America. I couldn't stand that. I live and breathe soul world and therapy world. She couldn't stand that. So it doesn't mean that you are a perfect mirror of each other. You probably wouldn't be compatible in a relationship like that. But what it does mean is that you have a lot of similar bonds. You have a lot of similar things that draw you together. Um, so there's an energy between you and a soulmate that really can't easily be broken. So, okay, so I think a soulmate characteristic is that no matter what the tone of the interaction, leave it with a good energy and not feeling drained. Yes, so there's another one. So if it is a soulmate or a life mate, they bring you light, they don't diminish it. And I think that is a really important characteristic to know, is that soulmate, that connection that you have is there to bring you light or support your light and not diminish it. You can have soulmates, like I said, that are teacher souls that take away, but really kind of that life mate is someone that, you know, you're here to support each other. You're here to be in a place where you can spot each other per se. There's a question, in terms of shadow sides, is that more of a twin soul characteristic or is it a characteristic of any soul relationship? So I would say it's more of a characteristic of a twin soul. When you have that darker side, you have that shadow side, that difficult side. But that doesn't mean that a life mate or a soulmate, you know, a life soulmate is not there to teach you. So you can still feel stirred and you can still get your buttons pushed, but it's really not in the same way. It's not that darkness. It's not that shadow side of, wow, this person brings the worst out of me. Life mates tend to bring out the best in you. So that's another way to distinguish whether or not you have a teacher soul or a life mate that is really there to help you kind of learn and grow and evolve. Does that all jive? Does that all make sense? But, you know, in my book, I talk a lot about, you know, diminishers versus life givers or light givers. And if you have a diminisher, you can pretty much be sure that they are a teacher soul of some sort. But if you have someone that's a supporter or someone that gives you energy and that you feel good when you've spent time with them, then that is likely a soulmate or a light giver of some sort. So I'm just going to throw this question out there. I know that we're a few minutes over, but I keep talking if people have questions and have thoughts that they want to share. I did a video this morning on self-love and why it is so hard for us to um, learn to love ourselves. So I'm just going to ask this question. How do you think any of these souls that we've already talked about, the twin souls, the twin flame souls, the companion souls, the teacher souls, the life mates, the soulmates, what do you think the relationship is between self-love and any of those types of souls are? What do you think that relationship is? Because I think that you know, I talk a lot about self-love during this month more than loving others, because I think the thing is we've got to learn self-love. This is a big part of why we are here on this planet. But what do you think? You know, what do you think about self-love and having these different kinds of souls in our lifetime? What would you say? What is the role that plays? You feel OT. What does OT mean? How do I define self-love? Okay, and that's a good question too. So, and that's a big question. We're actually going to probably be doing a soul chat completely on self-love at some point. So, self-love is loving and honoring yourself. That's a good question. I'm going to have to make sure that I articulate this well. Self-love is loving and honoring yourself at all cost. Now, I don't mean manipulating others. I don't mean being selfish. I mean basically honoring your soul's needs at any given time. That to me is what self-love is, which again, I usually interchange those with self-love, soul love. But how is it? Why do you think that these types of souls come into our life with respect to self-love? Now, oops, let's see. Sorry, that flipped off my screen. Let me see. I feel these people are here for us to see love of them that is a reflection of ourself. Okay. The other was a mistaken hit. Okay. Thank you. I just want to make sure that I get the questions right. So yeah, so she's saying that she feels like seeing the love in someone else is kind of a reflection of ourselves. Um, let's see, someone in Facebook says, we attract what we want, and if we love ourselves, we attract better energy. Absolutely, hands down. And that's why, as I'm talking about learning and evolving, my middle name should be evolution because I talk about evolution all the time. We are here to learn self-love. That is bottom line of any of our growth. And I mentioned this in the video, the Facebook Live video today, because every single challenge that we have under the human condition is based in a lack of self-love, meaning confidence issues or self-esteem or body image or alcohol and drug, or I mean, we could just keep listing. Whatever the affliction, whatever the difficult thing that we deal with, whatever the condition, is always based in a lack of or a challenge with self-love. Because if we learned to behave in a way that we love ourselves wholly, we wouldn't be having any of these issues. I would be out of a job, which would be fantastic, because it would mean that everybody was loving themselves enough to not eat their way through the cabinet or the refrigerator, or drink their way through the bar, or overwork themselves, or whatever the challenge is. We wouldn't stay in relationships, if we loved ourselves. Certain types of relationships, if we loved ourselves, we wouldn't do a lot of things. Let's put it that way. And so it's just super important to kind of consider that each and every one of our soulmates, whichever type of soul group member that we're talking about, is super important to realize that they are all here to help us learn self-love, each and every one of them, including our animals, by the way. Animals are unconditional. Well, I would say dogs are unconditional. There are certain animals who are not, I would say, unconditional. I had a very passive-aggressive cat at one point. So, but I think the thing is, even they are here to teach us. So we have to make sure that we remember that we might get really frustrated with them, but it's all there to stimulate self-growth in ourselves. Let's see, and someone says, I think you need to be in a mindset of self-love to have the ability to receive the lessons. Absolutely, well stated. We don't learn unless we are open to learning. We don't embrace our experiences or our circumstances unless we look at it from the eyes of, what am I supposed to learn from this? Meaning that we love ourselves enough to stay open instead of blocked to the experiences that are coming to us, so that we can really kind of evaluate them and see where we are supposed to evolve. So very well stated, Susan, because that's it, is we have to love ourselves enough to set boundaries, or to learn to say no, or to get out of a relationship if that's what we're supposed to learn, or get out of a job for that matter. So we have to be able to love ourselves enough to live in alignment. And in my book, the word that I use probably the most is alignment. So how do we align our lives for radiant living? Hands down, we learn to love ourselves. So hands down, there's the end of the story. So if you want a take home from tonight, think about that. If we really want to align our lives for what I call radiant living, meaning that we are on that path to just blowing our, satisfaction out the window, meaning that we are aligning our lives in such a way that we feel absolute radiance, that means that we're learning self-love. It means that we are learning to do the things for ourselves that help us create the best life possible. So that's the major take home, and that's why it is so darn hard to learn self-love. Is that game is over after that. Once we learn self-love, we're kind of done, and it's just a magical thing once you take one more layer of, wow, I'm learning how to love myself in this way. But then boop, here comes another one. We've got all these layers of things we were supposed to learn in order to fully love ourselves, and as humans, we're challenged with that. We have a lot of layers to work through and a lot of wounds to heal. So, all right. So I know I've talked a lot. Any questions? What last questions do you have? Because I've kind of circled the globe with talking about different kinds of souls and soul groups and soulmates. But what questions do you have? Is there anybody who has a question? Okay, I don't think I've seen any questions. Okay, so in that, I would encourage and challenge all of you to think about the number one lesson of self-love that you are supposed to be learning right now, and use the rest of this month, at least, since it's the month of love, to work on that. So whether it's telling yourself only positive things, whether it is stopping from grabbing something from the fridge, if it's whatever it might be, getting yourself out to exercise, it could be anything that is self-love based. Think about what it is that needs the most work and see what you can do to go in that direction, because this is the other thing. We have to be our own best soulmates. We have to be the ones who partner with us in order to evolve. We can't really count on other souls to help us evolve. We have to evolve first. So it's that whole commitment and accountability that we have to bring ourselves to make sure that we are going in that direction. So self-love, self-love, self-love. Any questions, any comments? I hope that all of you have a wonderful rest of the month. Treat yourself very well this weekend. I'm a big believer in celebrating yourself in terms of love, whether it's on your birthday, whether it's Valentine's Day, whatever it might be, every day. But make sure that you are taking really good care of you right now. Like I said, these are the toughest months to get through. January, February, usually the hardest, and I just keep trying to keep people afloat until at least March or April, so we can say we made it. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. Take good care of yourselves, and I will be back in a month. So keep an eye out for the next topic, and we'll go from there. Okay, have a great night. Bye-bye. You're very welcome. And yes, have a good weekend. Namaste to you too. You are quite welcome. Okay, so I'm going to end the Zoom. And you are quite welcome, Amber, and everybody else. So you have a wonderful evening. Take care and be well. Bye-bye.